welcome you again on behalf of the Arts Council and on behalf of the library. And remember always to thank them. They set up the chairs, they take down the chairs, they make the coffee, and they just help us. And this is our home away from home. So thank you, library. And if you get a chance to say thanks, you do the same too. So the judge tells me that he's on a limited time. So we're just going to turn it right over to Judge Eckrich. And thank you for being here.
You bet. Well, my partner in crime today is Kevin Forrester. He's the building supervisor for Meade County, and he's going to explain this schematic, and he's going to explain some of the model. And to be honest with you, when I first talked to Dodie about this, it had been my intent to try to give you who built the thing, how many tons of rock went into it, and just give you sort of the construction of it. Well, I failed miserably. So, over there, I have a sign-up sheet, and I want anybody that thinks they might know anything or anybody about that to write their name, and then I can follow up. I look at this mostly as a beginning of my original project rather than the end. But I think we're going to have a great program for you today. It's going to be actually more in the nature of show and tell. You can see that I've got a lot of artifacts here, a lot of pictures, and so I'm not going to follow any particular order. I don't think this is going to be a talking head kind of presentation today, and I want all of you at some point in time to get up here. I wasn't quite sure the room I'd be in, so I was, anyway, I'll hold these things up, but you're sure free to come up and look at them and the like, and I'll explain these artifacts to the best of my ability. Some of them we don't know, some of them we do. But back to Kevin. Kevin has a pretty good background with the new courthouse, and he takes an interest in the old courthouse. And we had a surprise today. We can't really tell you what it is, and I can't. I'm sorry, it's a surprise. All I can tell you is that it was discovered within the last 12 hours in preparation for this, and we are just simply not prepared to really even tell you what it is. All I can tell you, I was a history major. I love history. As a history major and somebody who's interested in, it was an incredibly exciting find. Incredibly. So we hope that perhaps down the road, we'll have an opportunity to come back and explain a little bit more. But for right now, it's a secret.
I'll sign you up as soon as you're ready.
Yeah. That's very neat.
You didn't find Judge Herzer in the basement, did you?
Well, in a manner of speaking, I did.
Okay.
And I'm very good at interaction. I'm very good at chiming in. And when I'm in the courtroom, I don't like people interrupting me. But in a venue like this, interrupt away. I prefer it, to be honest with you. I think what we'll do is we're going to start out with just sort of the original intent of what I had, and that was to explain, the physical layout of the old courthouse, and Kevin's way better equipped to explain that and give you some of the little nuances based on his expertise. And there's a lot of cool things that he's picked out about the schematic. This is a schematic of the old courthouse, and it's not exactly the original, but I'm going to let Kevin explain all that and explain what he has.
Very good, thank you. This is definitely interesting as we started digging through some of the old items that have been in the vaults in various places of the courthouse. A lot of these items actually were discovered as we made a move of the administrative offices from the courthouse. Everybody was in one building until about 6 years ago when the county completed the remodel, the refurbishing of the Erskine School building, and the offices had to do maybe more housekeeping, if you will, than they had done previously. We had to get the items moved from point A to point B, and in the process we discovered a couple of things. And of course, we have the model here. That's been in the lobby of the courthouse as long as I can remember myself. the very first time that I ever took it out of the case, and the reason I chose to take it out of the case is because it was kind of dusty and the inside of the case was a little, so it seemed like it was a good time to take a look at it. This thing is solid wood. I mean, it weighs about 30 pounds. And so just, you know, somebody put quite a lot of time into
Who
it.
made it?
I do not know that just yet.
But the discovery may reveal that.
During the clean out of the auditor's vault, of course, we discovered a shovel from the groundbreaking of the current courthouse in the early 60s. But we also discovered these prints here from the original courthouse, and these prints were developed from 1929, I believe, when it looked like we did a heating system upgrade to the original courthouse. They do not have every bit of detail. I mean, they were built more for the heating system upgrade, but there's quite a few interesting pieces that we pull out of it. And number one, as if you have a chance to come up here and look around, it's that we have pretty much the same layout, the same amount of courtrooms, the same offices that we do today. I mean, here we are 100 years later, 120 years later, and you know, we have about the same amount of jury rooms, the same amount of courtrooms, all of that sort of stuff, and you know, I found that quite interesting. I also found it interesting that we had both a county judge and a state judge within the building. I mean, there was offices for both of those. From a facility standpoint, you know, one of the things that really jumped out at me was that, okay, the jail is in the basement, of course. There's no restrooms in it, which was the norm. They were a chamber pot sort of setup, but it got me to looking at some of the other facilities. There is one restroom per floor, and they're laid out exactly the same. So here we are, as I read in the newspaper, of how we're changing our world over restrooms. We went from what seemed to be shared restrooms to split restrooms, and maybe we're headed back to shared again. I guess I'm not bringing that up, but it's definitely an interesting piece of this. I would really like to know where the stone was quarried, you know, for these buildings.
Right up across, above the old Stone County home up in Lazy S Road.
Above the old poor farm on the Lazy S Road, right off of Sly Hill.
Now, you write your name and your phone number right up there.
Yes, sir.
I will call you.
So ordered.
That's great information. I mean, I never would have guessed it would have been right off of Sly Hill. We knew it had to be close, but
It's right above the Sturgis sign to the left a little bit.
oh, that is
As
so
far as I
awesome.
know, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm. You know, there's so many things about this old structure that, you know, it's just sad that we were at a different time in the 60s and we didn't save that building. It definitely was a high point of my life being a county employee and being involved in the Erskine building. I mean, I've been a piece of it my whole life. You know, I went to school there, my mother taught there, you know, I've worked there. And, you know, the thing that really has amazed me about these structures is when you really start looking into it, and we had the Erskine building gutted, so to speak. I mean, we were inside, every piece of it, was how many man-hours were involved in this. It's like, wait a minute, we didn't have these nice cordless tools, we didn't have all these pieces. Everything was done by hand, on site, and you know, the littlest things were simply amazing. In the Erskine building, there's an amazing arch that is part of the old bell tower. So if you go to the modern commissioner's meeting room, you don't see it. It's up above the ceiling. It was the sign of the times. We didn't have the ability to get this nice big piece of iron to make a header to go over an opening. They hand fit all the stone pieces and made this arch. It wasn't an architectural detail. It was functional and 100% hidden. And you know, we just couldn't figure out a way that would work to expose it at this point. You know, this building, the Erskine building, is cool, but it didn't match the architecture of our original courthouse. I mean, we really had something going back then, and our leadership back then must have been amazing, and we must have actually had some money, because this building couldn't have been cheap in 1889.
What do you think it cost? I have the
That's what we
numbers.
can't,
Do you?
I looked and I looked and I looked, I went down, I
I
believe
have
you
the
mean,
numbers,
what's that?
I have the numbers.
20,000?
Where did you get it?
I researched the commissioner's minutes.
What's your name?
And please share how much?
I can't remember just offhand, but it wasn't 20,000.
More?
No.
Less?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It was a lot of money.
How come they tore it down?
Well, they made space. We built a new courthouse in the current location. This building stood where the jail is now, the law enforcement center, and it wasn't needed. And from what I'm told, I guess I'm feeling like I'm getting older every day, which I am, but it was torn down before I was even born. So I'm told that the rubble from the building is buried up in the Wakefield subdivision.
I asked Pearl Hoyle, who I can't remember exactly what position she had at the courthouse, but she worked at the courthouse. And I said to her, why did you have to, they have to tear that building down? And she said structurally there were too many cracks from the top to the bottom. And I don't know, but that's what she said to me, and I thought, well, yeah.
I suppose in the 60s there was more of a, if you look at our architecture, it was the middle of the Cold War, it was, we were function over fashion, so to speak, and it just didn't make sense to invest any money into this old structure at the time. Had we still had it, in the last 20 years, we probably would have maybe done something different, or it would have been something to at least talk more about. But unfortunately, it is what it is, and it's gone now. So.
When was it torn down? Because I'm trying to figure out.
Well, I can't give you exactly, but the dedication of the current courthouse was in August of 1966.
And
In fact,
they started building the new one in '65, so in all likelihood 64, 65.
so this is the guest book from the open house on August 2nd, or August 7th, 1966. So we must have held it during the rally so we could get extra people. There's quite a lot of people that visited, though. It's really something, and I would imagine that everybody in this room knows somebody that's on this guest book list. And
I did, in my husband's collection of pictures, there's 2 of them there that are part of the groundbreaking for the new building. And I couldn't find, he didn't have a date on it, but the 2 little ones on the left are pictures of that. People gathered for that groundbreaking. There you go.
nice. The only other thing that I can add, and that's from some photos, and I don't actually even see that photo here, Judge, but I've seen some historic photos that shows this amazing wooden staircase that came all the way down to Main Street. And from a facility manager standpoint, all I can think about is, oh my gosh, that's a lot of shoveling.
It went straight down.
They went straight down,
You saw that in Ken Howells, that's my court reporter, who was my court reporter for 15 years, and I emailed him this morning, last minute. Ken, it's his picture. Ken, can you send me that picture? Too late. Yeah. Kevin, would you do this? Would you just, here, I'm gonna move this. Would you just point out the various offices and such on here, and when the folks
Sure.
come up here, they'll be able to
Sure.
figure it themselves here.
We'll start in the basement, and the right-hand side here is where the jail cells are, and there's actually a restroom in the basement, but it's clear over here in the opposite corner. And of course, that's not how it is today. Today we have a toilet in every cell, but back then, definitely a lot different. Most of the rooms in the basement, except for the jail cells, aren't labeled, so we really don't know what they were used for. Assuming vaults and HVAC.
Can you go behind it and read upside down?
So yeah, this area was the jail cells, and that's it is what it is. That's pretty interesting. We actually still have jail cells in the in the basement of the current courthouse. We open that facility up every year during the rally. It is,
Don't use it though, just open it up, right?
well, we open it up and they run 50 to 55 people a day through that old facility. And, I mean, it's the old Gray Bar Hotel. I mean, it has metal bars and it's the real deal.
Okay, what is north, what is, I mean, so how that sat on the,
It, as near as I can tell from the photos, is that the drawings are oriented so that north is up.
okay.
So that's the way it is.
Right.
I remember Roger and Gina and Halofka lived in the basement.
They were the jailers.
Living quarters down there.
Right. You know, that continued on. In my tenure with the county, I actually demolished and remodeled what was the living quarters of the jail that's in the basement of the current courthouse. That is where our probation office, our court services people work out of now. So there was a you know, a full living quarters in there. There was a full bathroom with a tub and all of that sort of stuff. And all I can say is it must have been a really cold place to live.
Yeah, it was very nice.
The only restroom on the main floor is here in the corner, and it aligns with the rest of them, so they were virtually stacked. I mean, that's still a modern technique of, you know, making the plumbing all work. All the county offices were on the main floor. Like I say, I apologize, I'm struggling with
Here,
that.
I can help you. This is, that's the sheriff.
This is the register of deeds, isn't it?
Yep, that's the auditor. There's the superintendent, and there's the surveyor. They are different offices.
That's an interesting piece. The superintendent of schools was, you know, in the courthouse, and we still have records, you know, in the vaults from that timeline that, you know, have been there, you know, since the late 1800s. The interesting piece is the second floor was where all the judicial things were, and that's where there was one large courtroom and several smaller hearing rooms, and they're labeled often as jury rooms. So we must have really been able to be efficient to use one courtroom and have several jury rooms running at the same time. But once again, one restroom, and I guess to me that seemed to be kind of interesting that in the whole building. These are exact mirrors as you go all the way up and down, and you know, it makes you wonder how they had them signed, I guess. I have no idea of the original heating system, but it looks like they were going to steam radiators, a single pipe steam radiator system in this upgrade. And typically, you know, that was the old radiators that bubbled and gurgled all the time because the steam went up to the radiators, and after the steam condensed back to water, the same pipe drained it back to the boiler. And so as you had low points and whatnot, that's where there was a lot of that gurgling and you know, burping and sort of things that were going on in the building.
And Kevin, explain that how this schematic came about and what the date is and a few things like that. It's as I understood it, this isn't the layout. I mean, it was built, it was drawn from, and I'll just let Kevin take over from there.
Well, I mean, we discovered it. I don't truly know how they developed it. I mean, if this was the original use, but I know this was made in 1929, so the building would have been roughly, you know, 40 years old.
Yeah, 1894.
And, you know, after 40 years, they were looking at a HVAC system upgrade, you know, which, you know, I'll take this minute to talk about the current HVAC system in our courthouse. It's a little over 50 years old, and, you know, it's been functioning, but, you know, obviously as technology changes, you know, our commissioners have been making changes to save energy and provide better comfort in these buildings, and that's what these drawings were created from. And it's actually done by a train company, which, you know, we can all probably identify with as, you know, because the company's still in business today, so.
No central air.
Definitely no central air. That's not how we do things today, of course. But, you know, we didn't have near the heat generation devices. I mean, these lights all put off heat, these computers, all these electronic devices. I mean, we have a lot more heat gain today than we did then. Not that the buildings were any less uncomfortable or more uncomfortable in hot summer days, but definitely a different time.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. So a little bit of background. The courthouse, old one, this was built in 1894, all right? And the builder was a fellow by the name of Grams. And the architect, let's see here. The architect was, I should be on here someplace. I had a picture and I'm just not exactly sure, but it was Grams. He owned a lumber yard. He's also the same fella that built the Erskine building. And I believe the Erskine building was actually constructed prior to, yeah, it was Grams and Company. I don't want to get in your way. And the Erskine building was authorized in 1901, and they built it, well, they built it before, no, it was, the Erskine building was completed November 12, 1901, built from the same stone, that sandstone, built from the same sandstone as the courthouse. Same guy built Erskine, same guy built the courthouse. And I've got I'm not going to read this through, but this was a cool article that I found. It's by William Grams. And they found it when his daughter or one of his relatives found it when he was hospitalized out at Fort Meade. And it describes how he built this and the building of the foundation of it and what was wrong with it. He was kind of ticked at the architect. It's a cool article because he basically describes sort of the problems he had. I'll just point out a few of them. This was an interesting fellow. He was up on the Klondike, and he came back here in the 1880s or so. So it was 1893 and 1894 is at the time I built the courthouse. We got out nearly all the lumber and all. Some of the latter was not any too dry, as can be found to this day. And he was writing this in, well, we don't really know. It was discovered in 1932, okay? And that's maybe when he wrote this too. Not too dry. Of W.E. Jones, we got most of the 2-inch doors and windows that we also made in our planing mill. This lumber, Lewis and Cat, he died 10 or 20 years ago, had sawed out for himself to make a large boat, and he goes kind of diverges here a little bit. We got the lumber to make the doors and windows for the courthouse. It was some of the very best that grows. Still then, not so far away. It was well seasoned, as can be seen in the courthouse now. The courthouse was the largest in size of all my construction and the smallest in figures of money.
Wow.
But under conditions prevailing then, I still came out much better than the outcome of a number of later jobs. Sounds like a good businessman. The foundation for the courthouse was built years before, donated by the city of Sturgis to secure the county seat. That's an interesting little tidbit. Whalen and Hill did the work, not any too good. In the first place, though, there was an entirely different structure planned then built on the said foundation. At any rate, there was quite a lot of settling and cracking of the stones caused by settling of the insufficient foundation, but more or less blamed on me as contractor. This caused me quite a bit of worry, but by and by the settling and cracking went no further, and it is now no worse than 30 years ago, which may explain why they tore it down, and the lady that you were talking about, that, so they tore it down because of the cracks. That seems to be part of the history of that. The biggest trouble came about through the architect's mistake. Mr. Gilbraith from Deadwood drew the plan. There we go. Gilbraith. Mr. Gilbraith from Deadwood drew the plan as the building now stands. The outer basement walls were complete with straight stone caps over the windows. The caps, however, were not suitable, and the ones to be seen now put in place. It can be seen that all the caps, but the arched ones, are straight in the upper structure. But the arched stones over the basement windows are wedge-shaped, not in harmony with the rest of the work whatsoever. Why he placed them that way, I have never been able to figure out. This turned out to be the biggest mistake that could be made in this case. The trimming stone, okay, the trimming stone can be seen as dark red or brown. This stone comes from Hot Springs Quarry. It has a tendency to lengthen out in hot weather, like iron, much more so than any other stone that I know of, and streaks also more in cold weather, and let the caps loose and sag down. Next summer, it would push out again and crack some other stone, and cold weather sag again. It has done so for years. Now it seems it all hangs out there. And then here's how he follows this up. Somehow, architects are not blamed. The contractor catches it. Never mind that now. It's all over. I saw this man years after on the Klondike Trail. Cute? So I've got some artifacts up here. And again, what I was trying to do is, develop a construction history for that. And so I went through that vault downstairs, got filthy. And what I was looking for were those minutes, and I haven't double checked with Lisa, the auditor. That probably has it in. I looked through warrant books, I looked through county records, and they go back and forth, and there are records all the way back to before 1894, because they had a courthouse. Our Meade County was organized in, I believe, 1889. We used to be part of Lawrence County, and then in 1889, we busted off from them. So this building, built in 1894, as Kevin mentioned, that's a pretty impressive structure. It might not have been a whole lot of money, but it's a whole lot of money back then. And this tells me that at that time, we were a fairly wealthy county. So, to me, that's pretty impressive. 4 or 5 years after the county is organized, they're putting up that kind of building. So anyway, this is neat. I was going through, there's probably hundreds of these books down here. This is a judgment book for the court system. There are books like this for the treasurer, for the auditor, for the school, for the register of deeds, and you gotta look through these. It's just neater than heck. What I was looking for in particular, it's a judgment book. Okay, see that?
Oh, wow.
There's dozens of books. This is one of the older ones, not the oldest. Because what I was looking for was a judgment and a record of proceedings in the last hanging that happened in Meade County. And I found, this is the relevant time frame for that, but it's not, I couldn't find any criminal cases. These are all civil cases in here. And when I was going through this, what I found to be really interesting, you guys saw the beautiful handwriting. Those are the judgments.
Yeah.
That's what got written down. But what I found to be incredibly interesting is these books got transported to Pier for appeals. So what that means, this is back before we have computers and all this, so there had to be one complete record of what happened in any particular criminal or civil proceeding. Well, the only way to do that was to keep them in one place. There's the one place. So when you look through this book, you will see Supreme Court decisions in here.
Wow.
Yeah, took them by horse, I suppose. So what I was looking for, and I'll find it, I haven't found it yet, but what I was looking for was a record of the last hanging in Meade County, and that was, obviously, yep, let's see here, get this. They used to hang them in the county. We don't do that anymore. We don't hang anybody. So unless you talk to some of the some of the jailers, they might think, or some of the people in jail, they might think, hey, which brings me to a good point. I meant to bring this up when Kevin was talking. He was talking about the jail that we have now in the new courthouse we currently reside in, and how we use it every rally, and how we run so many people in it. I just want to tell you that every single person that we run through that particular jail, they are all historic preservation lovers. And we only put rally people that love history in there. Because we want them to get a taste of 1966 all over again. So anyway, the last hanging was in 1902. A fellow by the name of Ernest Loveswar was hanged. A lot of these pictures that you see came from a lady by the name of Julia Canoyer. She was a clerk up there for years and years, and she has many, 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 many beautiful pictures of this, and that's where I've gotten most of these. In any event, Mr. Loveswar was, he murdered a couple people out in the country, and quickly a posse didn't seem like there was any much investigation needed, so the posse went after Mr. Loveswar, brought him back, and I'll just read a little bit of it, this came from, my source for this is Black Hills Trails, A History of Struggles on the Pioneers in Winning the Black Hills by Jesse Brown and A.M. Willard. 1902, Ernest Loveswar, the last hanging in Meade County. In the year 1902, a couple of young men from Sioux City, Iowa, located on a homestead in eastern Meade County, South Dakota. And there they had built a cabin, fenced their claims, and were making great efforts to establish for themselves a home out on the broad prairie. They were fine, industrious, and honorable young fellows, and at odd times worked among the ranchmen in the neighborhood. On the 4th day of June, William Horlocker came riding into Sturgis upon a foaming horse. You got a little novel in here. And noticed the door ajar. Walking in, he found before his startled eyes the evidence of a foul murder, and going to the bedroom, he found it occupied by two forms who were strangely still. Some of this has quite a bit of politically incorrect language in here. But in any event, they identified this Loveswar as the individual who did it. An investigation by the authorities failed to disclose any immediate clue, but on the 6th day of June 1992, this individual had passed a check in Whitewood for $125 drawn on a Rapid City bank made payable to Ernest Loveswar, and purporting to have been signed by George Puck, and it was returned. That was where they started. I don't know how they exactly reported the information. Jesse Brown, deputy sheriff, and anyway, they tracked him down, and here's the picture. Here's the picture right there. Can't see it. And this hanging was in 1902, so it was at the courthouse, the other courthouse, whatever courthouse was before this one. So that kind of interesting there. I've got some other kind of neat artifact I'll point out to you. Discovered in the vault. This one I'd like to particularly point out to you. This is the state of South Dakota Meade County warrant made. This was what the judges made back in 1927. A salary of $102. You know, I don't know. I bet you probably a month. Yeah. Well, the times have changed. This is, and again, I'm running out of a little time, but I really want you guys to have a chance to look at some of this. And then I've got Bruce Hubbard here. I'm going to have him read off something here in a moment. This is an original order for coal that I thought might have something to do, because it's a contract for coal, the original, it must have been the courthouse prior to that. Again, this is something that I had discovered looking through the information on our new courthouse. This is in the evidence room, or well, I'll call it that. This was a weapon used for an aggravated assault back in 1943, and the defendant took this and hit a Miss Edna Vance in the head with it. And here are the x-rays of the head. I don't know too much more about that trial. Now, the coolest thing that I found, I don't know, how many of you ever went to that, when the attorneys and some of the other folks, we did that Custer trial? You guys ever go to that? Yeah, so there's our lieutenant right there. Or no, private, who are you?
No, First Lieutenant Andrew Lee.
Yeah, that's right.
Court Martial Major Reno.
Reno?
No, this is.
Yeah, that one, yep.
Different.
Yeah, so we had fun doing that. And, you know, for whatever reason, you know, we all kind of moved on. And Bruce was in on this, and I was in on it, so a lot of people were in on this. And what, the coolest thing that I found is this right here. This is a transcript of, this is the original transcript of the trial of Alice Tubbs.
Oh, my.
Coker Alice.
Yeah.
It's a hoot. It is actually, it's just a hoot. And in just a moment, I'm gonna have Bruce come up and just read the charges. And then I'm gonna go through, and I don't wanna bore you by this, the transcript is too huge. And so it might be a little choppy, so I apologize ahead of time. But you're really gonna get a flavor for what it was like and what she was like and everything else. And the reason I bring this up is someday, Bruce, we've got to do this. It's just a comedy. It's absolute. And it went up to the Supreme Court. She was on trial for running a sporting house. A sporting house. So, Bruce, would you just read the beginning charges there?
You mean the opening statement?
Yeah, the opening statement. Yep.
Need a mic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And I will tell you this: what Bruce reads, the state proved.
I don't know if Harry Atwater, that name's fairly familiar. He was the defense attorney, and Mr. Everett was the prosecutor, the state's attorney. So I'm not familiar with that name. Anyway, Mr. Everett starts. Gentlemen of the jury. That's not politically correct either. The information in this case reads as follows. And then he read the information that she was running a house of ill fame, is what they called it, the information. To the information, the defendant has been arraigned in court and entered her plea of not guilty, putting in issue all material allegations in the information. The state expects to prove to you substantially the following facts. That the defendant, Alice Tubbs, was on June 9, 1924, and for some time previous to that, and up to the present time, a resident of Sturgis, living near Sturgis at least, over on the north side of town across Fairview Creek, at about the end of the street known as Junction Avenue, at the foot of the mountain. We expect to prove to you that on or about the 9th day of June, 1924, Officer Emerson, who was at that time sheriff of this county, Earl B. Minturn, who was still a deputy sheriff, and Fred Westgate, who was at that time deputy state sheriff, went over to the place and conducted a raid. While there, they went into the house and in searching found a jug of liquor, moonshine whiskey, sitting behind a wood box. They conducted a further search of the house, and Officer Westgate, in his search, rapped on the door of a bedroom in the place. He was answered by someone asking who it was. And he told who it was. And a voice asked, why didn't he come back in? And he tried the door and couldn't get in. So he let her backed off and forced the door. When he went in there, he found a man there in bed, a soldier, and a girl named Myrtle Holden met him at the door. And she was dressed in a kimono. And all the parties were in varying states of intoxication. On June 15, 1925, Sheriff Barnes, Chief of Police Warsinski, and Deputy Minturn called the place again and made a further search of the place. They found a crowd consisting largely of soldiers and some civilians in the place, some 6 or 8 of them, and they found a woman identified as... I'll just go a little bit farther, Judge.
Okay, yeah, that's right, it's,
Bess Brundage, sometimes known as Mrs. E.W. McKibben, found her in bed in a bedroom adjoining the main living area of the house. In her bedroom was a soldier's jacket hanging at the foot of the bed and a soldier's cap or hat on the floor. Out in the main living room was the defendant, Mrs. Tubbs, intoxicated, and there were several other parties in the room with her, and one who has been identified as Sergeant Otterpool was there partially undressed. His jacket was off, and his shirt was unbuttoned, his trousers unbuttoned, and his leggings off. And one of the witnesses will testify that he was barefooted or in his stocking feet. At the time, the officers found 1 or 2 bottles of intoxicating liquor, and some of the inmates tried to get out by climbing through a coal chute. They were all apprehended and placed under arrest. But here's the, yeah, I assume it was, anyway, here's the, that's the original transcript. This has been reproduced, but, and this was a felony she was convicted of, and I see back here she was then pardoned by the then governor, who said he didn't want to see a 74-year-old white-haired lady in the penitentiary. So, but she lost and appealed, and it's all here. So, and actually for a felony case back there, Judge, I would say this is a pretty substantial transcript.
Yeah.
You know, and but they had a ton of witnesses, everybody that, you know, all the law enforcement and so on.
yeah.
So, we talked about this. I think you provided this, or I saw this 6 or 7 years ago, and it would make, you'd have to cut it down, of course, but it would make one heck of a play. So, anyway.
So I'm just gonna read, I'm gonna try to find some of the cuter passages here. It's just, Mrs. Tubbs, a house of ill repute, was, if you drive down the road, from the, I don't remember what street it's on, go past Rocking Tree, you know, come down the hill past the sheriff's office, and then go past Rocking Tree and keep going straight, okay, across the creek. Okay, that's where it was, in that general area. You guys know what that was called, don't you? What was it called?
Junction.
No, what was the area of town that Alice lived in? No?
Red light district,
Yeah.
Scoop Town. You know why it was called Scoop Town?
Because they scooped the soldiers.
Because they scooped the soldiers. Alice lived in Scoop Town, which was not within the city limits. It was in the county. So she lived right across. This is where her house of ill repute was. Well, the background on this, Bruce has read some. By this time, Alice, she had been getting along, and perhaps she wasn't professionally involved in a house of ill repute, but it sounds like she did a little work on the side, you know. So this particular night, the cops had been skulking around. Yeah, they'd been skulking around, and there's something in here. I was trying to find it, where Alice just busts out. She just busts out, and while she's on the stand, and says, "What kind of man skulks around in the middle of the night, peeking in women's windows?" What the heck? And then Alice had been in jail a fair amount over her career, and she actually knew the judge, and there's a part in here that's just a hoot where she says, she turns to the judge and she says, "Well, now, Judge, you know I was here. I was down in the basement and I cooked you that pie." So anyway, Alice was a very familiar figure, and there's parts of this transcript too where there's another part in there where one of the state's witnesses, I can't remember if it's a sheriff or the city cop, I don't really remember who it was, and they're asked some questions. This particular witness is asked some questions about whether they had been to Alice's place ever before, and this and that. The way his testimony goes, he says, "Well, you know, I was at a party with the deputy sheriff and the mayor, and we were all there, and well, then some of the boys went over to across the street to Dallas's house. And this is the sheriff, and the mayor, and all this, you know. And, well, did you go over with him? Oh. That's one part of it. And then there's some other cute things where, oh, here, this is really short. I gotta read this one. This is just too good. Yeah, as Bruce was saying, they put on a ton of witnesses, and what they had to do, what they had to prove, was that this was a house of ill repute, a boarding house, and the judge was real narrow on them. They couldn't opine as to Alice's reputation or Alice's character. They could only opine, these members of the good members of the community, as to the reputation of the house itself. So there was a lot of sort of jiggling and wiggling to try to get around that. And that's kind of it's kind of cute. So here, this is C.D. Erskine. We recognize that name?
Oh, yeah.
C.D. Erskine?
Yeah.
There you go. A witness called to the witness stand to testify on behalf of the state, being first duly sworn to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, testified as follows. Direct examination by Mr. Everett. This is the state's attorney. What is your name? C.D. Erskine. What is your calling or profession? I am a pastor of the Sturgis Presbyterian Church. How long have you resided in Sturgis? I am going on 20 years. And during that time, have you been a pastor of this same church? I have. Do you know the defendant, Alice Tubbs? I do. How long have you known her? About 15 or 16 years, I think. Do you know where she lives? I do. And do you know where her house is? I know about where it is. I know the neighborhood it's in. Don't know just where her house is. During the interval, this is the question by the state's attorney again. During the interval since the 9th day of June, 1924, do you know the general reputation in this community as to the character of her house? I do. What is it reputed to be? Bad. And then there's an objection, which the court overrules. And again, this is part of where they have to get in, you know, bad probably isn't quite good enough, so Mr. Everett wants to do a little better. He keeps asking, and the Presbyterian minister doesn't really want to answer it exactly, because he probably burns his lips. What is it reputed to be? And finally, reluctantly, after a little while of dragging it out, it is reputed to be a house of prostitution. Cross-examination by Mr. Atwater. You were never over there, I should judge, from not knowing right where it was. I never was. You are merely testifying as pastor of the Presbyterian Church. No. I will answer that question, no. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that answer means. Anyway, we're running a little short. You know, we kind of jumped around. I hope it was interesting. I've got a little bit of time, or is Kevin here? Okay. But if anybody has any questions for either Kevin or I?
Judge,
Yeah.
may I tell a really quick story?
Sure.
They're telling, I can't relate, I came to town it'll be 40 years ago in a couple of weeks, it's 1976, and of course I never saw the old courthouse, but the new one, referring to the jail in the basement. Those of you that haven't been to a jail, you know, with the federal standards, you've got closer TVs, you've got all kinds of these employees, you know, and suicide watches and all this stuff. Well, back then, there were 3 cells in the basement, and one of them was called the bullpen. Well, it's still there, and you put, 20 guys or so in there. I don't know what, actually, I don't know what they did with women when I think about it. Anyway, they had that apartment that Kevin was referring to where court services is, and Pete Peterson, I think his given name was Olin, he and his wife Hannah ran the jail. He was the jailer and she was the cook. Let me ask, is anybody friends or relatives of the Petersons? Good. Uh-oh. Anyway, I'll say this politely. Hannah apparently was not the greatest cook in the world. In fact, my clients would tell me that her cooking was awful. And she was the only cook, of course, and so during her tenure as cook, she probably was responsible for more pleas to the state penitentiary than the state's attorney was, because I had clients that would plead guilty immediately just to get the hell away from the cook. So,
Did she get it delivered?
She was great at grilled cheese. Does anybody have any questions or comments or
I have
stories?
a comment about that place he's talking about.
Mhm.
I lived there.
In the apartment or the other part?
No, I had friends that were in there, but my mom and dad are Earl and Lucille Ferguson. Sure. And then somebody mentioned back here, the old part, where Roger and Jean Ann ran that when he was deputy sheriff. I've been in there too. So I ran around both these buildings from about 55 through whatever. I left here in 71. But I know the Erskine building as well as I know any building in town and the courthouse. The old courthouse. With Johnny Egger was enjoying his.
What's your name?
What's your name?
What's your name?
I can tell you some stories.
Yeah, that's what I want. That's what we're
I
looking
know.
for. What I'm gonna do is, we're gonna, like I say, I'm a little tight, but, and we're not done yet, but I'm gonna pack up, but I'm gonna leave that there. And Dodie, would you just really encourage these folks, the ones that I pointed my finger to especially, and anybody else to sign that, and then Dodie, maybe I can get it from you. Okay. Yeah.
For those that are interested, I have a rock wall at my house that is built out of the rock from that old stone building, which was taken from where they dumped the rock up at the head of Dead Man Canyon. And that was back in the early 60s.
Okay.
And my father-in-law, who was a German stonemaker, who built the Mercedes-Benz truck factory in southern Germany, he came over here and built the rock wall that is in front of my house at this time.
I really need you, sir. I really need you. Because you've got some great oral history. I need it.
And W.E. Jones, which you were talking about, I think he was a surveyor, am I correct? Okay, that was my grandfather, my adopted grandfather, and he's the same person that surveyed the Strawberry Hill Road, and later he moved out to Stoneville and did the surveying on the Red Owl Cemetery.
Yep, see, that's the point, you guys, is there's a lot of collective memory here. And that's how you develop history, that's how we preserve this. And so, it might be that you can't think of right now that you have any independent recollection or you have any independent memory, but you know somebody who does, you just flat do. So that's why I need you so that I can track this stuff down, record it. I'll be able to take pictures of that and capture some of this, So
Judge Eckrich, I know you were asked to be at History Day with Booth last year.
Yeah.
And couldn't make it, and I think I heard you aren't gonna be able to make it this year again.
that's right.
We encourage you as soon as you can get there. Everybody's
Yeah.
gonna wanna see this stuff at History Day too. I just wanted people to know there is an agenda available for the History Day that's coming up in June again, the second annual one. If you have anybody who could bring some of this and do a booth,
Yeah, I know, it'd be cool. We'll hold that thought, but again, I've got the folks here, a lot of folks, that are here, and I got you now. So even if you have any kind of information, I'm asking, please do that. I keep saying that, I know, but it's important to me. Yes, sir.
I'd like to give you, as part of your collection, this is made from the stair railing from the old courthouse torn down in 1965.
oh no.
Get that as part of your collection.
Wow.
Cool.
Thank you. All right, let's put that. That's really neat, man. Thank you.
What's it sound like?
Yeah.
You're not gonna show us what it sounds like?
Works. Sir, would you give me your full name?
Been there a while, I bet.
Dwayne Hayes or Diana Hayes.
Oh, Diana?
Diana Hayes.
Okay.
And she lives in the old stone house, which is the original port farm. I live with her.
With him.
Mom was one.
Thank you. So, Kevin and I have been talking about some cool stuff, and again, I think this is gonna be really neat. I have time for probably a couple questions, and then I
It's
gotta
for
roll.
sale.
Yes, ma'am.
Can anybody go and research this stuff, or is it just
Right,
privileged few?
no, and I don't like to think of myself as privileged. I just like to think of myself as I have the key to the vault. But here's the thing is, yes, ma'am, they're all public records, but it's not an issue actually of being able to look at them. You sure can. It's the hard part is it's just the administration of it. These things here, for example, I pulled these out from behind a locked, in the vault behind a locked deal, right? And this vault, you don't have public access to it. The records, yes. The vault, no, because it's an unsecured space. There's just too much else. So it isn't an issue of can we look at it? Yes, you can. But it's a matter of can you help us understand what it is? Because if you go down, ma'am, I've been down there. I've been down there looking for this construction stuff. I don't know, 20 hours, 25 hours. And I went through the treasurer's books, I went through these books, I went through the auditor's books, and I still can't find what I'm looking for, and I know what I'm looking for. And someday, somehow, as part of this whole process, it would be wonderful to have people in there to catalog this. I mean, because these aren't just records, these are artifacts. I mean, these are works of art in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, and it's certainly beyond me to try to do this. And I do think it's important to capture history. And again, it's just a matter of access and that kind of thing. So if you ever had, if you were ever researching a particular project or something and you wanted to see something, just let us know. I get a hold of Kevin, and between the two of us, we can see if we can figure it out somehow. And then you'd probably, we could find a spot for you in the courthouse to look through. And if you found something cool, geez, let us know. Yes, ma'am.
I have a picture of Poker Alice being served. A fella in a suit, she's on the front of that house, and he's giving her this paper.
Do you know the date of that photo?
Well, Bill Grothy took it when he was, and she died in 1937, so it was, and I'd like to find out when that paper was served.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like from this transcript that she'd probably been served more than once. But that's cool. And again, what would be super neat is I wouldn't ask anybody to ever provide any kind of originals unless you were wanting to. But there's a way to capture those pretty well, and if you wouldn't, mind, if you have the opportunity, maybe just scan it and reproduce it and send it. And if you and maybe a little note, this is who I am. This is what I have. I don't know anything about it. Maybe as I'm going through some of this stuff, I might be able to tell just by looking at the picture of the deputy or something, because I'm finding different things. I might be able to identify a time frame, and if I find enough of these records, I might even be able to find the original. I mean, there are original summonses down in the vault.
I was just looking, actually, on this charge, she wasn't just served, she was arrested and brought to jail on the 2nd of May, 1925. That was the date of her arrest.
1925.
I probably have time for one more. If there is one more, then I gotta back up and go. Hey, thank you guys. It's been a wonderful audience.